Have you ever wondered what a man gains when he invites the woman he once humiliated to witness his greatest celebration? In the heart of Atlanta, Marcus Johnson believed he had found the perfect way to prove to the world that he had risen above his past. He was 35, a successful businessman, the kind of man who owned not just cars, but fleets of them, not just houses, but mansions. To the public, he was confidence wrapped in designer suits and polished shoes. To himself, he was a king preparing for a coronation. But behind the champagne toasts and glossy invitations, Marcus carried a quiet obsession. His first marriage had ended in shame, and the woman he once called his wife still walked somewhere in the same city. Danielle Carter. 32 years old now, gentle-faced with eyes that once held love for him, but left his mansion with nothing but a small bag in her hand. Marcus told himself she was history, a closed chapter. Yet when the wedding planner asked if there were any special names he wanted on the guest list, his pen paused for only a second before he wrote hers down. Danielle Carter. The letters curved boldly across the page. First row. Reserved. Why would he do it? Because he wanted her to see what she had lost. He wanted her to sit there quietly, watching his new bride glide down the aisle in diamonds and silk, while the memory of her own tears burned inside her chest. Marcus believed victory would taste sweeter if Danielle was there to witness it. The invitations went out in gold envelopes heavy enough to feel like treasures. Names of governors, business moguls, family friends, all printed in elegant fonts. But one stood out to him. Danielle. He imagined the look on her face when she opened it. Surprise first, then pain, then regret. Atlanta buzzed with news of his upcoming wedding to Vanessa Parker, a rising star in the fashion industry. Vanessa was everything society praised. Tall, radiant, her gowns featured in magazines, her smile lighting up charity galas. She was the trophy Marcus had always wanted, a woman whose presence alone spoke of power and success. And she would be his wife. At least that was the story he wanted everyone to believe. When Marcus leaned back in his leather chair, swirling a glass of bourbon, he pictured the day. Red carpets stretched across the entrance of the grand hall. Chandeliers brighter than the sun. Politicians shaking his hand. Photographers shouting his name and cameras flashing as if he were royalty. He could almost hear the music, see the curtains parting, and feel the world clapping for him. And in that vision, there was Danielle seated in the front row, silent, broken, hidden behind a forced smile. That image thrilled him more than the wedding itself. But life has a strange way of turning pride into ashes. On a quiet evening, the golden envelope slid across a small wooden table in an apartment on the south side of the city. Danielle's hands trembled as she opened it. She had not expected to ever see Marcus's name again, not printed in bold, not surrounded by words of celebration. Her heart pounded as her eyes scanned the card. Marcus Johnson weds Vanessa Parker. Saturday, 5 o'clock. First row seat reserved for Mrs. Danielle Carter. Her breath caught in her throat. The room tilted slightly. She set the invitation down and stared at it as though it had claws. Why would he invite her? What was he trying to prove? Monica Williams, her best friend since college, walked in from the kitchen carrying 2 mugs of tea. When she saw Danielle's pale face and the gold card resting on the table, she nearly dropped the cups. "Tell me this is a joke," Monica whispered. Danielle shook her head slowly. "It's not." Monica set the mugs down and picked up the invitation with sharp fingers. "Front row. He actually printed your name on the front row." Danielle's lips trembled, but she forced a small smile. "That's Marcus. Always putting on a show." The room fell silent. The faint hum of the refrigerator filled the air. Danielle's 3-year-old television sat dark in the corner, its reflection catching the glow of the lamp. Outside the window, the city lights blinked like restless stars. Monica folded her arms. So what are you going to do? Throw it in the trash, I hope. Danielle lifted the card again, her eyes soft but steady. Maybe he wants me to feel small. Maybe he wants me to regret. But I am not the same woman who walked out of his house in tears. Her voice was quiet, but inside her chest something stirred. A fire she thought had burned out was flickering again. Monica shook her head. You don't need to prove anything. Not to him. Not to anyone. Danielle did not answer. She placed the invitation back into its envelope and held it against her chest. For a long moment, she closed her eyes and breathed deeply. In the silence, one thought repeated itself again and again. If he wants me to be there, then maybe I should. Because sometimes the greatest answer to cruelty is simply to be seen. The storm had not come in a single night. It had been gathering for years like clouds pressing against the horizon. Danielle Carter remembered every silent dinner, every sharp glance, every question Marcus Johnson dodged when his mother asked about grandchildren. For 7 years, she waited, prayed, and hoped that each new month would bring news of life growing inside her. But the months passed empty, and hope turned into a stone in her chest. On the night it all collapsed, the mansion was too quiet. Marcus came home late, his tie loose, his face lined with irritation. He tossed his keys on the dresser and stared at her with eyes that no longer softened when they met hers. 7 years. Danielle, he said, his voice low but heavy like a hammer striking wood. 7 years of waiting and nothing. Do you expect me to grow old without a son, without anyone to carry my name? Danielle sat at the edge of the bed, her hands trembling in her lap. She had heard the words before, but tonight they felt sharper. Marcus, we have tried. I have tried. Maybe there is still hope. Maybe another doctor could help us. Hope. Marcus let out a bitter laugh. I am tired of hope. My friends whisper behind my back. My mother calls me every day to ask why you have failed me. Do you know what it feels like to be mocked as a man who cannot produce children? Tears welled in Danielle's eyes. I have begged God every night. Do you think I enjoy this pain? Do you think I have not carried the shame with me? He paced the room like a man trapped in a cage. Enough of your tears. I am finished. Tomorrow I will speak to my lawyer. This marriage is over. The words landed like a knife. Danielle gasped, her chest tightening, as though the air had vanished. Divorce after everything I have given you, after I left my family for you, Marcus. Do you remember the vows we made, for better, for worse? He turned his face cold. Love cannot give me children. My mother was right. I should have left you long ago. You are nothing to me now. Her lips trembled. Do not call me nothing. I stood by you when you had nothing, when you were building this business brick by brick. I believed in you when no one else did. But Marcus's heart had hardened. He pulled out his phone and dialed without hesitation. Yes, counselor, prepare the papers. I want the divorce finalized immediately. Danielle's body went rigid. She stared at him in disbelief. You already planned this. He did not flinch. If you love yourself, pack your things tonight. By morning, I do not want to see you here. Her knees buckled, but she forced herself to stand. She walked slowly to the wardrobe, her hands shaking as she folded her clothes into a small bag. Every dress carried a memory, every pair of shoes, a reminder of dinners, church services, birthdays, and quiet nights. Now those memories turned bitter, heavy as stones. Marcus watched from across the room, arms crossed, face like granite. He did not move to help, did not speak to soften the blow. At last she zipped the bag and turned to him, her tears falling freely. You will regret this one day. You will see the truth. He looked away, unmoved. Danielle stepped into the hallway. The mansion that once felt like a palace now resembled a prison. The maids lowered their eyes as she passed, too afraid to speak. She opened the heavy front door, and the cool night air struck her face like a slap. She paused on the doorstep, glancing back at the house she had called home for 7 years. Her voice trembled but carried a quiet strength. "I may leave with nothing, but I will not remain broken. My God will fight for me." Then she walked into the darkness, her slippers dragging against the marble floor behind her. She did not know where she was going. Her legs shook, her eyes blurred with tears, but she kept moving. The city hummed around her shops, closing dogs barking in the distance, strangers passing without a second glance. None of them knew that the woman walking past them had just lost her husband, her home, and her peace. She thought of her best friend, Monica. They had known each other since college, and though life had carried them in different directions, Monica had never shut her door on her. Danielle clutched the bag against her chest and turned down a narrow street toward Monica's apartment. By the time she reached the familiar door, the night had deepened. She knocked gently. A moment later, the door opened and Monica appeared dressed in a robe, her face shocked at the sight before her. "Danielle, what happened? Why are you crying? Did someone die?" Danielle tried to answer, but the words broke into sobs. She collapsed into her friend's arms, trembling. "Come inside," Monica said, guiding her into the small apartment. She closed the door, sat Danielle in a chair, and waited. Through tears, Danielle whispered, "He threw me out. Marcus said I was cursed. He said I am the reason he has no children." Monica's jaw tightened, her voice filled with anger. "That man has no fear of God. After all you gave him, he still blames you. He never even checked himself." Danielle shook her head. "He would not listen. He said he was fine. His mother called me names and I believed them." Monica took her hand firmly. "No more. You will not cry alone anymore. You will stay here as long as you need. This house is yours now." Danielle let out a long sigh, her eyes closing for the first time that night. She was broken, but not alone. The first night in Monica's apartment was the longest of Danielle's life. Though the bed was soft and the room quiet, her mind refused to rest. Each time she closed her eyes, she heard Marcus's voice echoing sharp and final. "You are nothing. You are a curse." By dawn, her pillow was damp with tears. Monica woke to the sound of footsteps pacing the small living room. She found Danielle standing by the window, her arms wrapped around herself, staring out at the city. "You need to eat something," Monica said gently, setting a plate of eggs and toast on the table. Danielle turned slowly, her eyes swollen. "I cannot swallow. Food feels heavy in my throat." Monica crossed the room and put her arms around her friend. "You are safe here. You are not alone anymore." Days passed, but Danielle struggled to find her strength. She barely spoke, barely touched her food. She sat by the window for hours, watching children run to school and neighbors carrying groceries, wondering how the world could continue so normally when her life had shattered. Monica tried everything to lift her spirits. She told jokes, cooked Danielle's favorite meals, even dragged her to the market once. But Danielle kept her head low, afraid of running into someone who would ask about Marcus. "What would I say if they asked?" she whispered one morning. "That my husband threw me away like trash because I could not give him a child." "You will say the truth," Monica replied firmly, "that he was the fool who traded a diamond for a stone." For a moment Danielle smiled, but it faded quickly. Her heart felt too heavy. One evening Monica sat beside her on the couch and spoke carefully. "Danielle, have you ever gone for a proper medical checkup?" Danielle blinked. What kind of checkup? A fertility test. Have you ever tested yourself to be sure the problem is not from you? Danielle shook her head slowly. Marcus said it was me. He never agreed to be tested himself. He always insisted he was fine. Monica frowned. So you believed him all these years without knowing the truth? What choice did I have? He would not listen. His mother cursed me. They all blamed me. I began to blame myself. Monica's eyes burned with determination. No, this has to stop. We are going to the hospital tomorrow. I want you to hear the truth from a doctor, not from Marcus or his mother. Danielle hesitated, her voice small. What if it really is me? What if the doctor confirms everything? Monica squeezed her hand. Then at least you will know. But I believe you are fine. My spirit tells me Marcus is hiding behind his pride. That night Danielle lay awake again, but not from grief. Her thoughts spun with fear and faint hope. What if the doctor said nothing was wrong? What if Marcus had lied all along? And the next morning, Monica accompanied her to a private clinic on the east side of the city. The waiting room smelled of antiseptic and fresh paint. Danielle's hands trembled as she filled out the forms. A nurse called her name. Inside the doctor's office, a kind man in his 40s greeted her. I am Dr. Raymond Harris. How can I help you today? Danielle lowered her eyes. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I was married for 7 years. No children. My husband divorced me because he said I was barren. I have never done any tests. Monica added quickly, we want a full checkup, doctor. She deserves to know the truth. Dr. Harris nodded gently. You did the right thing by coming. We will run a few tests and then we will talk. The hours crawled as Danielle went through blood work scans and hormone tests. Her heart pounded with each step, terrified of the results. 2 days later, she sat nervously in Dr. Harris's office again, Monica by her side. The doctor adjusted his glasses and smiled. Danielle, he said softly, everything looks perfectly normal. Your reproductive system is healthy. You are ovulating well. Your hormones are balanced. There is nothing wrong with you. Danielle stared at him, unable to breathe. Nothing, he repeated with certainty. From what I see, you are completely fine. If there was no pregnancy for 7 years, I suggest your ex-husband be tested. The issue is not with you. Tears filled Danielle's eyes. She covered her mouth, shaking. Monica leapt from her chair. I knew it. I knew it. Marcus lied to you. He blamed you to hide his own shame. Danielle whispered, her voice breaking. All this time I begged God. I hated myself, and it was not me. Dr. Harris leaned forward. Do not let what happened steal your peace. When the right man comes, you will have your own children. Believe me. Outside the clinic, Danielle sank onto a bench. The city moved around her horns, blaring, people rushing, but her world had shifted. For the first time in years, she felt lighter. All those nights I cried, she murmured, and it was never me. Monica held her hand firmly. Marcus will pay for what he did. One day he will look at you and wish he had never let you go. Danielle lifted her eyes to the sky. For the first time since leaving the mansion, a small spark of hope glowed in her chest. Maybe this was the beginning of her healing. The days following the doctor's revelation felt unreal to Danielle. For years, she had carried the heavy stone of shame in her heart, believing she was broken. Now the truth was like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Yet freedom did not immediately erase the pain. She still woke at night, with tears on her pillow, still heard Marcus's cruel words echoing in her mind. Monica refused to let her sink back into despair. One morning she stood over Danielle's bed with her hands on her hips. Get up. Enough of hiding. You need a new purpose. Danielle blinked sleepily. A purpose, yes, Monica said. You are too smart and too strong to sit by this window waiting for the world to change. Let us create something. Let us build a life that belongs only to you. The idea seemed distant, almost impossible, but Monica would not relent. She reminded Danielle of her love for cooking, of the afternoons in college when she would prepare meals for all their friends, of the way her dishes always made people smile. You could start small, Monica urged. A food stand outside this building. Workers are always rushing by in the morning. They will line up for your cooking. Danielle hesitated, but deep inside something stirred. Perhaps rebuilding her life did not mean waiting for miracles. Perhaps it meant taking one step forward, even if her hands still trembled. The very next week, Monica helped her set up a small table with 2 large pots, a stack of disposable plates, and a handwritten sign, Carter's Kitchen. At dawn, the smell of fried chicken, collard greens, and steaming rice drifted through the street. By 7 o'clock, office workers began to notice. Madame, can I get a plate of that chicken? A man asked, pointing at the sizzling pan. Danielle served him with careful hands, her voice quiet but steady. To her surprise, the man smiled warmly. This is the best meal I have had all week. I will be back tomorrow. Word spread quickly. By the end of the week, a small line formed each morning. Danielle's cheeks flushed with something she had not felt in a long time. Pride. Not the pride that destroyed, but the pride that came from honest work and grateful customers. Monica clapped her hands as the last plate was served one Friday. Look at you. People are calling your name again, not as the woman Marcus divorced, but as the woman who makes the best food in this neighborhood. Danielle smiled faintly. It was not yet joy, but it was a beginning. One afternoon, as she was wiping the counter, a man approached wearing a crisp white shirt tucked into brown trousers. He carried a laptop bag and had kind eyes that softened when they met hers. Your food smells too good to ignore, he said, smiling. 1 spicy plate, please. Danielle packed the meal and handed it over. That will be $6. He gave her a clean bill and lingered for a moment. My name is Eric Coleman. I work at the IT firm down the road. I think you will be seeing me often. She gave a polite nod, expecting never to think of him again. But Eric returned the next day and the day after, sometimes ordering 2 plates, sometimes staying to tell a brief story or a gentle joke. He never forced a long conversation, but his presence always left Danielle with a small smile. Monica noticed quickly. One evening she leaned against the kitchen counter with mischief in her eyes. Who is the man that keeps showing up at your stand? Danielle shook her head. Just a customer. Are you sure? Because the way he looks at you says otherwise. Danielle rolled her eyes, but her heart skipped quietly. She was not ready for love again. Not after the wounds Marcus had carved into her. Still, she could not deny that Eric's kindness was different. It did not demand. It did not wound. It simply offered warmth. As weeks passed, Danielle began to rise earlier, cook with more care, and greet her customers with a steadier smile. The pain had not vanished, but it no longer defined her. Each plate of food was a small step away from the night she had been cast out, and a small step toward a future she could choose. One Sunday evening, she sat on Monica's balcony watching the sunset paint the sky orange and gold. The city below hummed with life, and for the first time in months, Danielle allowed herself to breathe without the weight of sorrow crushing her chest. Maybe I am finally free, she whispered. Monica placed a hand on her shoulder. You are not just free. You are rising. Danielle closed her eyes and let the words sink in. She was still scarred, still cautious, but deep within her heart, a quiet fire was burning again. The fire of someone who had survived, and who would no longer live broken. The weeks turned into months, and Carter's kitchen became a familiar stop for the morning rush. Danielle no longer hid her face behind a scarf or avoided people's eyes. She stood tall behind her stand apron, tied neatly ladle in hand, greeting customers with soft smiles. What once felt like shame was slowly being replaced with a sense of dignity. And almost every day, Eric Coleman appeared. Sometimes he came in a hurry, buying food for his coworkers. Other times he lingered standing by the counter with his warm eyes and gentle humor. Danielle noticed he never pried into her life, never asked about the shadows in her past. Instead, he told her about small things, like how the traffic lights in Atlanta always seemed to turn red when he was late, or how the vending machine at work ate his dollar and never gave back the soda. His stories made her chuckle when she thought she had forgotten how to laugh. One slow afternoon, when customers had thinned, Eric leaned on the counter holding his usual plate of spicy chicken. "Danielle, do you ever rest? Every time I pass here, you are standing, cooking, serving. Do you have anyone to help you?" She shook her head. "I am used to doing things on my own." He studied her for a moment, then said quietly, "I do not mean to overstep, but are you married?" Her breath caught. She looked down at her hands. "I was," she answered softly. Eric nodded, not pressing further. "I am sorry if I brought up something painful. I lost my wife in a car accident years ago. For a long time I thought I would never open my heart again." Danielle glanced up, surprised at his honesty. His eyes were steady but carried a sadness she understood too well. For a moment, silence hung between them, two wounded souls recognizing each other's scars. When Eric left that day, Monica could not contain her curiosity. "So the customer with the kind smile is more than a customer now?" Danielle shook her head firmly. "No, he is simply a man who buys food." But in her heart, she replayed his words. "I lost my wife. I thought I would never open my heart again." As autumn settled in, Eric's visits became part of Danielle's rhythm. He began bringing small gifts, a bag of rice, a carton of eggs, sometimes just a bottle of water. "For your business," he would say with an easy grin. Danielle tried to refuse, but he always waved her off. "Let me support what is good." One afternoon, he arrived when no one else was waiting. He sat on a plastic chair beside her stand. "Danielle, forgive me if I speak too plainly, but I see something rare in you. You remind me what peace looks like. Not the loud kind that fades quickly, but the quiet one that sits in your chest and makes you feel at home." Her eyes widened. She did not know how to answer. Her heart raced with fear and longing all at once. "I am scared," she whispered. "I know," Eric said gently. "But I am not Marcus. I will not break your heart." It took months before Danielle agreed to meet him outside the food stand. Their first date was a simple coffee shop where Eric listened more than he spoke. Their second was a walk in the park where they watched children fly kites under the wide Georgia sky. Their third was dinner at a small restaurant where Danielle laughed so hard at his stories that the waiter smiled at them. Each step forward felt risky, but each step also felt healing. One Sunday evening under a large oak tree in the park, Danielle finally asked, "Why me?" "Eric, you could have chosen anyone." He smiled softly. "Because you are real. You carry pain but still choose to stand. You were broken but did not stay down. That is the kind of woman I want beside me." Her eyes filled with tears. She reached for his hand. "Then I want to try too." 6 months later, they stood in a small church, surrounded by only a handful of friends. Monica was the loudest, clapping and dancing, as if she had won the lottery. "I told you," she shouted. "I told you good things would still come." Danielle wore a simple white dress, nothing like the gowns she once imagined as a young bride, but her smile was brighter than diamonds. Eric stood tall beside her, his voice steady as he promised to love and protect her. The ceremony was quiet, no live band, no cameras flashing, no politicians shaking hands. Yet for Danielle, it was the richest day of her life. For the first time in years, she felt safe. When they returned to their modest apartment, Eric kissed her forehead and whispered, "I love you, my queen." That night, Danielle lay awake not from grief, but from gratitude. She thought of the nights she cried in Monica's arms, the days she sat by the window unable to eat, the years she believed she was cursed. Now she had a new home, a partner who cherished her, and a chance to build again. She closed her eyes with a small smile. The storm had not disappeared, but she had found shelter in love. And that shelter would soon bring her a miracle she never expected. It began with a wave of exhaustion Danielle could not explain. One morning she struggled to rise from bed, her body heavy, her stomach turning at the smell of food she once loved. At first she thought it was the flu. Eric brought her tea, insisted she rest, and kissed her forehead before heading to work. But the sickness did not pass. 2 weeks later, Eric returned home to find her pale and weak, unable to finish a plate of soup. He knelt beside her chair. "We are going to the clinic tomorrow." No arguments. Danielle nodded, too tired to resist. The next day, she sat nervously in the small examination room while Eric held her hand. The nurse entered with a bright smile carrying a chart. "Congratulations, Mrs. Coleman. You are pregnant." Danielle froze. Her mouth fell open. "Pregnant?" "Yes," the nurse said with delight. "About 3 weeks along." Tears poured from Danielle's eyes. Her hands flew to her face as sobs shook her chest. Eric stood, his own eyes wet, pulling her into his arms. "Did you hear that? You are going to be a mother. We are going to be parents." The joy was overwhelming. For years, she had been told she could never carry life, that she was cursed, that she was barren. Yet here she was, holding proof that God had answered her tears. In the months that followed, Danielle's body blossomed with new life. She woke each morning with a mix of excitement and nerves. Eric painted the nursery a soft yellow, built a crib with his own hands, and placed tiny shoes on the shelf, smiling, as if he had already met their child. One routine appointment brought a surprise that neither of them had imagined. As the doctor moved the probe across Danielle's belly, his eyes widened. "Mrs. Coleman, there are 3 heartbeats." Danielle sat up in shock. 3. The doctor nodded with certainty. "Yes. You are carrying triplets." The room erupted with cries of joy. Danielle covered her mouth, screaming through her tears. Eric dropped to his knees, gripping her hand. 3 children at once. God, you have given us more than we ever asked for. When they told Monica later that evening, she jumped and clapped so loudly that neighbors peeked through the door. "Do you see now? This is the proof. You were never the problem. And now, the whole world will know." Months passed quickly, filled with baby showers, gifts from neighbors, and careful preparations. Eric read books on parenting while Danielle knitted small socks. The community rallied around them, amazed by the miracle. Some who had whispered behind her back now came to offer congratulations. Danielle accepted their words with grace, but never forgot the years she had suffered in silence. On a calm Saturday morning, the miracle arrived. The hospital echoed with cries of newborns as Danielle delivered 3 healthy boys. Nurses clapped, doctors smiled, and Eric laughed uncontrollably as he held each child. "They look like you," he said through tears. "But this one has my ears. I am keeping him." Danielle cradled all 3 against her chest, her tears falling onto their tiny faces. I am not barren. God proved them wrong. The days that followed were filled with sleepless nights and endless feedings, but Danielle embraced every moment. The boy's cries were music to her ears, proof of life where once there had only been silence. News spread quickly. Neighbors whispered in awe. Friends from her old neighborhood shook their heads in disbelief. She has triplets, they said. The same woman Marcus threw out. She has 3 sons now and a husband who adores her. Danielle was not thinking of Marcus anymore. Her focus was on the 3 little faces staring up at her with innocent eyes, on the man who kissed her forehead each morning before going to work on the peace that filled her modest home. One evening, as she rocked the babies to sleep, Eric sat beside her, exhausted, but smiling. "Do you ever think about the past?" he asked quietly. She nodded slowly. "Sometimes, but not with pain anymore. I think of how far I have come. I think of what we have now." Eric placed his arm around her shoulders. "You are stronger than anyone I know, and our sons will grow up knowing their mother is a queen." Danielle smiled, kissing the soft curls of her children. Her scars were still there, but they no longer defined her. The woman who once walked out of a mansion with nothing now sat surrounded by everything she had ever prayed for. That night before she fell asleep, she whispered a prayer of gratitude. For the triplets, for Eric, for the chance to live again. And deep in her heart, she knew this miracle was not just for her, but for every woman who had ever been told she was less. While Danielle's home filled with the cries of newborns, Marcus Johnson sat in his office tower overlooking downtown Atlanta. His business had grown larger, his cars more expensive, and his name carried weight in every meeting. Yet the one thing he craved still eluded him. He was 35, successful in the eyes of the world, but still without a child. He told himself it was Danielle's fault. He repeated the lie so often, it began to sound like truth. When people asked about his divorce, he shrugged and said, "She could not give me children." They nodded in sympathy, never daring to question him. Then Vanessa Parker entered his life. She was glamorous, a 30-year-old fashion designer whose face appeared on magazine covers and whose clothes walked the runways of New York. When Marcus first met her at a charity gala, her laughter was bright, her presence magnetic. She looked like the perfect answer to his unspoken ache. Within months, they were seen together everywhere. At business launches, at restaurants, at the theater. The whispers around town grew louder. Marcus has finally moved on. Vanessa will give him the family he always wanted. Marcus enjoyed the attention. He bought her gifts, dresses, a new car. He showered her with the kind of affection he had denied Danielle. In public, he looked like a man reborn. But behind closed doors, shadows lingered. Vanessa had been with him for nearly a year, and each month she stared at pregnancy tests that came back negative. Fear crept into her heart. One evening, as they sat on her balcony sipping wine, she spoke carefully. "Marcus, do you ever think about us seeing a doctor?" He frowned. "Why, just to check. We have been together for some time and nothing has happened. It would not hurt to be sure." His face hardened. "Are you suggesting I am the problem?" "No," she said, quickly reaching for his hand. "I am only saying maybe we both go together to be safe." He pulled his hand away. "You sound just like Danielle, always blaming me. I do not want to hear it again." Vanessa fell silent, fear tightening her chest. She had seen his temper before, but never this sharp. She decided to keep her worries to herself. Meanwhile, Marcus was already planning. He wanted the grandest wedding Atlanta had ever seen. He met with event planners, musicians, decorators. He ordered a gown from Milan for Vanessa and rented a hall near the waterfront that could hold hundreds. He wanted chandeliers, roses, golden chairs, and a live band that would shake the walls. To his friends, he said, "This wedding will prove I have moved on. Everyone will see what a real wife looks like." His closest friend David raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure it is wise to invite your ex-wife? What if things do not go the way you expect?" Marcus smirked. "There is no what if. She will sit in that hall and watch me move forward while she sits with nothing." Still, David looked uneasy, but Marcus was too consumed with pride to notice. One evening, as he reviewed the guest list, his eyes lingered on the name he had added himself. Danielle Carter. He imagined her sitting in the front row, forced to watch Vanessa walk toward him. The thought filled him with twisted satisfaction. Across the city, Vanessa noticed his restlessness. She asked softly one night, "Marcus, why does this wedding matter so much to you? Is it about us or about proving something?" He kissed her quickly, avoiding her question. "It is about us. Do not worry." But in his heart, he knew the truth. He wanted Danielle there. He wanted her to see that he had won. Vanessa prepared for the big day with all the excitement the world expected of her. She tried on her gown, arranged a bridal shower at a resort, and smiled for the cameras that followed her. But inside, her doubts grew. Each month without a child, each sharp word from Marcus when she mentioned doctors, each glance at the empty test kits hidden in her drawer, reminded her of a possibility she did not want to face. Her mother's voice rang in her ears. "Are you sure it is not him? Some men hide their shame by blaming women." Vanessa brushed the thought away, but could not silence it. Marcus, meanwhile, walked through the decorated hall days before the wedding, his chest swelling with pride. He could already see the headlines, the photos on social media, the admiration of friends and rivals alike. He whispered to himself, "This will be the greatest day of my life." But somewhere deep inside, a small voice whispered a warning he refused to hear. The city buzzed with excitement on the morning of Marcus Johnson's wedding. Social media feeds lit up with photos of the glittering venue, the grand hall by the waterfront, draped in roses and golden lights. Guests in designer suits and shimmering gowns filled the red carpet, cameras flashing as politicians, athletes, and business leaders made their way inside. It was the kind of event Marcus had dreamed of, a spectacle meant to display power and success. Marcus stood at the altar, dressed in a white agbada embroidered with gold thread, his shoes polished until they gleamed. He glanced at his watch, restless, waiting not only for his bride, but for the one person he most wanted to see. His chest tightened at the thought of Danielle Carter walking into the hall. Outside, the crowd stirred as a sleek black Rolls-Royce pulled up. The back door opened slowly, and Danielle stepped out, wearing a flowing yellow gown that shimmered in the sunlight. Her face was calm, her steps measured. Beside her, 3 small boys in matching white shirts and yellow bow ties held her hands. The whispers began instantly. "Is that his ex-wife?" a woman gasped. "She has children," another murmured. 3 of them. Phones lifted into the air as guests scrambled to capture the moment. Danielle walked forward with dignity, her sons clinging to her sides. She did not rush, did not falter, her smile soft but unshaken. The crowd parted to let her through, stunned into silence. Inside the hall, Marcus felt the blood drain from his face. His mouth went dry as he watched Danielle approach the front row seat reserved for her. David, his best man, leaned close and whispered, "Marcus, she has triplets. Do you understand what this means?" Marcus shook his head, dazed. "This cannot be real." Danielle sat gracefully, her boys climbing onto her lap. They whispered in her ear, "Mommy, we made it." She nodded and kissed their foreheads, her calm presence striking like a sword through the noise of the hall. Moments later, Vanessa entered, dressed in her radiant white gown, the veil covering her face. She walked slowly down the aisle, her steps faltering as she noticed the silence. Her eyes darted across the room, confusion rising, as she saw the guests staring, their phones raised, their whispers spreading like wildfire. When she reached Marcus, she leaned in and asked under her breath, "What is going on?" Marcus could not answer. His eyes remained locked on Danielle and the children. The pastor cleared his throat, trying to move the ceremony forward. "Shall we begin, but—" Vanessa turned sharply, her voice cutting through the hush. "Marcus, who is that woman sitting in the front row with those boys?" The hall froze again. Marcus swallowed hard. "That is Danielle, my ex-wife. And those children," Vanessa demanded. His silence betrayed him. Vanessa stepped back, her face pale beneath the veil. "You told me she was barren. You told me that was why you divorced her." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Danielle rose slowly, holding the youngest boy in her arms. Her voice was clear and steady. "Yes, they are my sons. I was never barren." Marcus refused to be tested. He blamed me because it was easier than facing the truth. The guests erupted in murmurs, some shaking their heads, others staring in disbelief. Vanessa's voice rose sharp with anger. "So it was you all along. You lied to me just as you lied to her. You ruined her life and now you tried to ruin mine," Marcus stammered. "I did not know. I thought she was." "You thought," Vanessa snapped. "You had no proof, no test, only pride." David stepped forward, his expression grim. "Marcus, you have no defense. The truth is standing right in front of you." The pastor shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to continue. The choir sat in silence, their voices stilled. The photographers no longer knew where to point their cameras, torn between the bride trembling at the altar and the ex-wife glowing with strength in the front row. Vanessa's hands shook as she lifted her veil, revealing her tear-streaked face. She turned to Marcus one final time. "I cannot marry you. Not today, not ever. I deserve honesty. I deserve better." She dropped her bouquet on the stage, the sound echoing through the silent hall, and walked away with her bridesmaids hurrying after her. Marcus reached out desperately. "Vanessa, wait." But she did not look back. The guests erupted into hushed conversations. He is the one with the problem. All these years he blamed her. And now she has triplets. Danielle gathered her children and rose from her seat. She did not gloat, did not shout. She walked slowly toward the exit, her boys beside her, her head held high. She looked like a queen leaving a courtroom, dignity wrapped around her like a robe. As she reached the door, Monica appeared, eyes sparkling with pride. "You did it, Danielle. You showed the truth." Danielle shook her head. "I did not come to prove anything. I came to be seen." They stepped into the Rolls-Royce, the driver closing the door gently. Inside, one of the boys looked up. "Mommy, are you okay?" She smiled softly. "Yes, I am more than okay." Back inside, Marcus stood alone at the altar, his agbada heavy on his shoulders, his crown of pride slipping into disgrace. The hall that had been filled with music and laughter now felt cold. His guests avoided his eyes, whispering behind their hands, their admiration turned into pity. David placed a hand on his shoulder. "Marcus, the truth has found you. The whole world has seen it." Marcus stared at the door where Danielle had walked out, his chest hollow. For the first time in his life, he felt the weight of regret crushing him more than any failure in business ever could. And as cameras flashed and video spread across every screen in the city, the story of Marcus Johnson's wedding became not a tale of triumph, but of humiliation. The wedding hall emptied quickly after Vanessa walked out. The band packed their instruments in silence, the waiters collected untouched trays of food, and the guests whispered as they hurried to their cars. Marcus Johnson remained on the stage, His white agbada wrinkled, his gold embroidery dull under the fading lights. For all his power, he looked like a man stripped bare. David stayed beside him, quiet for a long moment before speaking. "You planned this day for months, Marcus, but you forgot that lies cannot stand forever. She came with triplets and the whole city saw it." Marcus pressed his hands to his face. "I thought I was right. I thought she was the problem." "No," David said firmly. "You never tested yourself. You just assumed. You let your pride destroy everything." By that evening, videos of the wedding had flooded the internet. Clips of Danielle stepping out of the Rolls-Royce with her sons Vanessa, throwing down her bouquet, and Marcus standing frozen at the altar, were replayed thousands of times. Headlines blazed across social media: the disgraced groom, the truth revealed, the woman who won without fighting. Danielle, back at her home, sat with Monica and Eric while the triplets played on the rug. Monica scrolled through her phone, reading aloud comments from strangers. "This woman is a true queen." She did not need to shout. She just showed up and the truth spoke for her. Eric glanced at Danielle with pride. "You carried yourself with dignity. That is what people will remember." Danielle smiled gently, brushing a curl from her son's forehead. "I did not do it for the world. I did it for myself to close the chapter." The next day, Marcus appeared at Danielle's door. His suit was wrinkled, his eyes red from sleeplessness. He removed his cap and held it nervously in his hands. "I do not want trouble," he said softly. "I came to say I am sorry." Danielle stood still, her arms folded. "Sorry cannot erase years of pain, Marcus. Sorry cannot give back the nights I cried believing I was cursed." "I know," he admitted, his voice breaking. "I judged you without proof. I let pride blind me. I have already gone for a test." The doctor confirmed it. "The problem was mine all along." Her eyes softened, but her voice stayed steady. "I am not angry anymore. I have healed. You should heal too." He nodded, tears slipping down his cheeks. "Thank you for listening. Thank you for forgiving me, even if I do not deserve it." When he left, Danielle closed the door and leaned against it, exhaling deeply. Monica touched her shoulder. "You are stronger than anyone I know." Danielle shook her head. "I am not strong. I am simply free." Across town, Marcus faced the collapse of his reputation. Business partners pulled out of deals, investors hesitated to take his calls, and the press hounded him for comments. His mother Evelyn visited one afternoon, her face lined with regret. "We were wrong," she admitted quietly. "We destroyed a good woman with our words." Marcus lowered his head. "And now she is happy, and I am left with nothing." But far from his despair, Danielle's life flourished. Her restaurant expanded with Eric's support. Her children grew healthy and bright, and her laughter returned to fill her home. Each night she looked at her sons and whispered prayers of gratitude. In the end, the story was no longer about humiliation, but about redemption, about how dignity can outshine disgrace. Danielle's strength became a reminder that truth always rises, no matter how deeply buried by pride. 1 month had passed since the wedding that never happened. The videos were still circulating headlines, still flashing across every feed, but for most of the city, life had moved on. For Marcus Johnson, however, the nightmare did not fade. He sat in his office one afternoon, staring at the test results from the fertility clinic. The words glared back at him like a sentence carved in stone: low sperm count, low motility, patient advised to begin treatment immediately. He dropped the paper on his desk, his hands trembling. For years he had carried himself like a king, blaming others for his emptiness. Now the truth was in black and white. The phone buzzed again. More messages from angry clients, from investors who no longer trusted him, from gossip blogs. eager for another quote. He turned the device face down and closed his eyes. The memory of Danielle walking into his wedding in that yellow gown replayed endlessly. She had not shouted, had not cursed. She had simply walked in with her children, and the truth had spoken louder than any accusation. That night, he dreamed of her. In the dream, she was younger, standing in their old kitchen, smiling as she stirred a pot of soup. He reached for her hand, but she vanished, leaving him alone in the silence. When he woke, he found himself crying. Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Danielle's home was filled with laughter. Her restaurant had grown so popular that she had rented a larger space. Customers lined up not just for the food, but for the warmth she carried. Eric managed the finances, Monica often helped in the kitchen, and the triplets ran around the tables, bringing joy to everyone who walked in. One evening, Danielle stood in the doorway of the restaurant, watching her sons chase each other, while Eric chatted with a group of loyal customers. The golden light of the setting sun filled the room, and her heart swelled with gratitude. She thought of how far she had come from the night she walked out of Marcus's mansion, with nothing but a small bag, to this moment, where she owned more than she had ever dreamed. Eric came up behind her and placed an arm around her shoulders. "Look at this place. You built it with your own hands and your own strength." She smiled softly. "Not alone. I had you. I had Monica. And I had God's mercy." He kissed her temple. "And now you have peace." Weeks later, a letter arrived at the restaurant. The envelope was plain, the handwriting familiar. Danielle opened it slowly. "Thank you for your strength. Thank you for your forgiveness. You taught me a lesson I will never forget. I lost a good woman, and I hope one day your sons will know how proud they should be. I wish you peace." Signed, Marcus. Danielle folded the letter and placed it in a drawer. She felt no bitterness, no anger, only a quiet sense of closure. On a Saturday morning, she took the triplets to the park. They ran to the swings, their laughter filling the air. Monica joined her on the bench, sipping coffee. "Do you ever think about him?" Monica asked. "Not with pain," Danielle answered. "I think of him as part of the journey that led me here. Without that storm, I would not have found this peace." Monica nodded. "You turned ashes into beauty." That evening, Danielle sat with Eric and the boys at the dinner table. One of the children asked innocently, "Mommy, will we be famous one day? Everyone was talking about you on the internet." Danielle laughed gently. "Fame is not what matters. What matters is that you grow up knowing your worth. You will know that your mother was once told she was nothing, but she rose again." Eric added, "And you will know how strong she is, because strength is not about never falling. It is about rising after the fall." The boys listened with wide eyes, not yet understanding the weight of the story, but sensing the love in their parents' voices. Later that night, Danielle stood by the window, watching the stars. She whispered a prayer, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. She prayed for her children's future, for Eric's health, even for Marcus's healing. She prayed that her story would remind others that no lie lasts forever, and that truth always finds its way to the light. Across town, Marcus sat in front of his mirror, his reflection a man he barely recognized. His clothes hung loosely, his face was lined with regret. He whispered to himself, "What did my pride gain me? I destroyed the woman who loved me, and now I am alone." But in that admission was the first step toward humility. For the first time in years, he began to see himself clearly. Life did not end for either of them that day at the altar. For Danielle, it was the beginning of a new chapter filled with love and family. For Marcus, it was the painful lesson that pride and lies can strip a man of everything he holds dear. And so the story closed not with bitterness, but with a lesson meant for anyone who has ever been wronged and for anyone who has ever wronged another. True love is not proven by wealth or by grand displays, but by patience, humility, and honesty. When pride blinds the heart, it destroys both love and dignity. Real healing begins when truth is faced, forgiveness is chosen, and peace becomes greater than revenge.